And there it is. All right, really quickly, everybody, welcome to another episode of Inspired by Jimmy L. You guys know that we're doing a very special segment or series here about parenting, and this particular one here will air around Father's Day. And to help me out with that, we have Mr. Ira on. He's coming on to share some of his techniques, his tips, his life, and his journey as a father. So welcome to the show, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
Thank you for having me, Jimmy. Just getting to talk to you is worth it.
Now, don't make me cry. Don't do that.
I hope you do.
Don't do that.
Right along with you.
Don't do me like that. Oh my gosh, come on. No, don't do that to me. Jesus. Okay. So, Ira, first off, let's basic questions. Are you married? And how many kids?
I am married, 26 years we just hit in March. Thank you so much. We have 2 kids. My daughter she just turned 23, and my son is turning 20.
Okay.
Turning 21, he's 20 now.
Gotcha. Okay, so starting out right off the bat, were your kids planned kids or?
Both planned.
How exactly did that work for you and your wife? Was it something that, go ahead.
So I'll tell you, we planned, if the best laid plans are what they are when it comes to having kids. So, we decided we'd lived together for a while we were in New York, and I was finishing up my second master's in speech pathology at NYU. And when I was done with that, we decided we wanted to move to New England. And we were living in New York, in Brooklyn, New York at the time where I grew up. And we quit our jobs and went cross country in a Nissan Sentra in a tent. And, stayed away a few months. We came back and we moved up to Massachusetts. And we were there for about a year. And we decided that we were ready to have a kid. We started trying, and like many, it took a little bit before things happened for us, but not too long. And a year and change later, our daughter came. But really, it was a. I think we're ready. I mean, we didn't look much. We've never been much, unfortunately, looking at finances. We knew we had enough money to put a little bit down on a house. We were living in a duplex at the time, a condo. And we just decided, now's the time. We were in our still mid-20s, and seemed like the right thing to do when we decided about it.
Was there any pressure from outside people or family or nothing like that?
Well, it's funny. We didn't have pressure, but we had the questions. Years ago when my kids were little, I was in a band of dads called the Pop Stars. And our 2 albums, the Pink album and the Blue album, are still available on Spotify. but it's not music for kids. It was a bunch of local dads, and it was music for parents. And one of the songs was called We're Trying, about how all this time you're trying to hide from this guy that you're having sex with his daughter when you're going out. But the second you get married, he starts saying to you, "So, you trying?" We didn't have pressure, but we sure got that question here and there.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, but it wasn't a pressure thing. I mean, we really, our parents were cool, and they all lived far enough away. It wasn't an issue.
Lucky you. I've talked to some parents that was not the case. Definitely not the case. So lucky you too on that one. So what do you wish, or if anything, do you wish you would have known something about parenting before you all actually started parenting?
Oh, yes. An enormous quantity of things that I wish I would have known about parenting. I work with a lot of kids who have my background is special needs, and my forte is kids with severe to profound emotional and behavioral disorders. That's what I've done most of my career in residential treatment and a variety of other places. And with those kids, calm like a sheet of ice. Nothing is going to disturb me. I've witnessed some of the wackiest stuff happen with some of the truly most disturbed children in the United States of America. And I don't blink an eye. But with your own kids, there's an emotional investment. So one of the things I really, I wish I would have thought about more I was pretty good. I mean, I think I was a good dad, etc. But there were things that I probably got pissed off about that I probably, looking back,
Yeah. Yeah.
not really worth getting pissed off about. If you have, and if you have kids who are, if you have siblings, if you have more than one, um, let them work out their own stuff, even if it's horrible to listen to. I certainly tried to get involved, not all the time, but more than I should have, as my kids were, getting into it with each other. It's typical sibling stuff. None of it. You need to keep an eye on it because you don't want it to become abusive in any way. But really, the back and forth stuff, whatever. Do your own thing. You know what? Go argue outside if you're going to argue. I really don't want to hear it. Really, being more calm about that, not getting involved. That's mostly the big one.
So, okay, so bringing that up, and I know we just talked a minute ago about your parents being further away. So, how does your parenting, or how did your parenting style differ from how you were raised?
Oh, enormous quantities of ways. I mean, not in terms of the love. I mean, my parents, gave me an enormous amount of love. But we're different people. It's a different generation, and although my parents were certainly, they were your typical New York Jewish communist types. They still were kind of very straight-laced about stuff. They were people who went about things in the right way. My mother was a college professor. My dad was an attorney. The worst businessman in history. He used to give away his services pretty regularly. But he was an attorney. We were not. Well, when people hear attorney, they think wealthy. We were not wealthy.
So when you say college professor
in Brooklyn, New York.
When you say professor and lawyer together, I mean immediately. Well,
yeah, we were living
everywhere.
We were living in an apartment on West 2nd Street and Avenue Z in Brooklyn, New York. It was not exactly, fancy schmancy, right on the border of Coney Island. So anyway, but they were very, very much kind of straight-laced, toe-the-line people, where my wife and I, deadhead types, a little on the hippie mode. Both of us had, split and lived abroad for a while and then came back. And as I told you, I used to do the dead tour all the time when I was younger and travel around the country. And my wife and I were, split and did the country when we got married. So, we're a little bit more free-spirited. Our kids grew up at festivals and musical stuff and all kinds of things like that. And but the love, the core thing, that's all window dressing. The thing that we did give our kids, that my parents gave me, was the sense that you are loved, you are cared for, and I'm here. If you start to fall, I'm your net. And I hope I gave my kids that. And that's what my kids, I mean, my mother still gives me that. She's 80 years old, and I still feel that if I need some, right now she needs us, but if I really needed something to turn around, she'd be there for me in a second, because that's what mommies do. And
I love that. Oh, I love that. So now you said a little bit on the hippie side. Okay. So with that being said, I'm assuming that your parenting style is a little bit more relaxed, or at the very least, far less judgmental and more experimental.
Yes.
Would I be all right in saying?
Which was good and bad. You have to. We were not far out as some of our friends who, but we kind of open with our kids, and there are lines, and it's important for us to maintain the lines. But but that's try and do things. We go and try.
And that's actually kind of my question. So with your parenting style and being a little bit more experimental, or slightly even relaxed, I should say, has anything ever come back to just like bite you and be like, okay, I probably should not have done that?
Enormous quantities. But I mean, that's, what you asked me earlier, what's the advice I could give?
Yes.
Here's the advice I could give. The best advice I could give. Know that the second your child is born, you are going to do something at some point not that long afterwards, that's going to be couch fodder for some psychiatrist when your kid's sitting there if they wanted it to be. You know, it's hindsight is 2020, and here we're dealing with human beings, and it's kind of like teaching. You know, after all these years, you know, I with the incredible oversight and people, you know, picking every little bit.
Yes.
If you're with kids all day long, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things you shouldn't have. You're going to do things you shouldn't have. And as long as the intent is right and it wasn't too far over the edge, oh well. And that's kind of how I have to look back at all the things that I screwed up with my kids. You know, were there things that we kind of should have reined in? Oh my goodness. You know, enormous quantities of things where, you know, I didn't find out certain things, vigilant as we were about certain things. There were certain other things I didn't know, and we're pretty good. You know, but you know, you hope for the best. You know,
and I can understand that, because at the end of the day, I mean, especially growing up, I mean, your kids are going to have a mind of their own, you know, and they have to experiment, they have to learn life lessons, you know, and they have to do it in their way at the end of no matter what your teachings are, you know, they're going to have to do it. And so I find it to be interesting. And so it's something that I've actually brought up to all of the parents that I've been speaking to, you know, if you could go back and change anything, but, you know, just in regards to the advice piece of that, like how would you know?
I don't know if I went back and changed it, if we would have had a different result. You know, hindsight is 2020 in terms of what you're seeing. But as you know, if I would have changed it, who knows what their turnaround would have been. You know, so people's reaction and what they do, I can't manage anybody's head but my own, no matter how much I want to. All I can do is try to influence, you know, be a guide, which is what parenting really is. You're a guide, you're a net.
At the end of the day.
And you know, having two children, my son had some illnesses as well, but my daughter, who was in bed for a lot of years, that kind of changed our parenting style too, because we were, you know, running to doctors or home and then trying to be with my other son and get to his games and do the stuff with him. And then he was sick and having to take care of him and helping her and him and getting, you know, so it was all that jazz. And, you know.
Oh, wow. I will say, I know you said that they were both planned, and I don't know. And because I was a planned child as well. And I've always felt, not that I was better than other people, but I know. I felt that I was different. You know what I mean? Because when you or your parents let you know that I've done any and everything in my power to make sure that you exist, that does something to you. You know what I mean? Like, it mentally does, at least I know for me, it did something mentally to me to know that I was wanted. I wasn't an accident. This wasn't a screw up. I was designed to be here, and you made it so. And so it's very interesting to hear how you're kind of working through things. And I would love to eventually at some point know their perspective of how they're processing. And again, and that's only be coming from a selfish place on that side of it.
Yeah, I'm sure those kids were happy accidents, or, you know, you can look at it that way. You know, sometimes aren't the best things in life what you weren't expecting, and there it is.
And there it is. Speaking of which, this whole unexpected pandemic that we're dealing with right now, and parents being a guide, and so much happening in the world that none of us could have ever expected or even thought about or wanted. How are you all dealing with this? How did you explain this and what's happening in the world to your kids?
Well, you know, my kids are adults, so they're looking at it in their own ways. My daughter, as I said, is out in the world far more than I am right now. She stays at, you know, rightly or wrongly, I will never turn away my child from my door. So she was at her boyfriend's for a bunch of days, and then she came to our house because it was a holiday this week, and here we are. My son is living in an apartment about 20 minutes away from here. It's him and his roommates. He's been really careful about stuff. If he wants to come over to my house, he's welcome to come over to my house. In terms of discussing this stuff, all I could do with them is the same thing I do with everyone else, which is, one, be honest about how I'm feeling. And you told me earlier that you've seen some of the videos that I've put out where, a song winds up in there somewhere, which was the intent, but it turns out me discussing, my feeling about things. And, you have to be honest at first. So the reality is, am I getting through this? Of course I am. Am I luckier than most? Yes, I am. And so we're doing okay, but does that mean I never get that angst? That generalized just, oh my goodness. Of course I do. Do I snap a little bit here and there more than I usually do? Of course I do. Do I try to bring it down? Am I exploring other ways? Yeah, and all I can do is encourage them to do the same thing. When something happens, just like in every other part of life, you take it in, experience it, try to release it, move on to something else and distract yourself, or move on, or work through it and move to something else and look for the light. Reach out to other people. I truly, my first post about this whole thing on social media was all about the idea of how much gratitude I have that if this has to happen, we're in an era with all this technology.
Yes.
And by
I did not
utilizing
think
that
of it that way, but
technology, we can reach out. I mean, you and I, as we said, we've been in contact for a few years. We've never
yeah,
spoken before. So,
never.
so
So,
here comes the silver linings of all these things, and reaching out and accepting people and looking for people to help and making sure that you're spreading that positive energy. Is that any different than any other time? No. The only difference is right now we're dealing with a lot more of our own stuff, and you need to work through it, and you need to make sure that you're being as safe as you can in whatever situation you can, but getting through life, you got to get up in the morning and move. The first week and a half of the schools being closed, I slept, man. I don't sleep very much because I'm out a lot playing music or going out to music with my wife, and I sleep a few hours, wake up, I rage party, wake up, teach my kids, do my private clients, deal with my family, go out and rage party again. I mean, that's kind of where we go, and spread the light that way. And this is a situation where we're home, and you gotta work through it. This is right now's reality. It's not the new normal. It's right now's normal.
it is right
And
now.
that, if I could give anybody advice, and I certainly give it to my kids, is right now, this is where we're at.
So let me
That's
ask
it.
this then. So I understand that this is a 2020 version of Ira. How has this changed at all in regards to maybe the past 10 to 15 years with your kids when parenting and discussing something similar, specifically around maybe death and how it's handled or how it's being treated?
I lost that last piece there, Jimmy.
I said, I understand that this here is the 2020 version of Ira and responding to COVID-19. Is this similar, or how was this different maybe 10 or 15 years ago when dealing with both of your kids? Has there ever been a conversation surrounding around death and how to deal with that and allowing them to process that before they became adults?
Oh, of course. Listen, when my father-in-law passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and right around that same time, my he passed away. He was just sick for a long time. He had a heart attack when he was like 30s, and he passed away in his 60s. My kids were very close with him. They were little. Very shortly after that, my son's best friend passed away from leukemia. He'd been sick for a while.
Yeah.
Not long after that, my father, who had Parkinson's, started getting sicker and sicker, and my daughter was having headaches and headaches. My father died, and when I got up from sitting Shiva, the Jewish wake, kind of after the burial, and on the 8th day I came home back from Brooklyn to Massachusetts, and woke up in the morning to a phone call saying, "Go get your daughter. There's a lesion on the film in her brain." Um, you know, and a percentage on her life, was what we were told when we went to the emergency room, because they told us, pick up your kid and bring her there now. So, we've had to deal with this stuff, and we've had, people from our brain tumor survivors group who passed away, and people we know, unfortunately, in the modern day. My son's had friends and, pass away from opiates and other things, because that's unfortunately part of it.
That
We've
is
had
part of it.
a lot of discussion about death. And I'm someone who's never comfortable with that. For whatever reason, although I conceptually feel that energy and matter is all we are, and energy and matter never really dissipate; they just change. But I like being me, and I like being here. So again, open about it. and we discuss it. You know, I mean, my way of helping them through is usually to write songs for them, um,
Aw.
discussing it. And I wrote a song for my daughter when my father-in-law passed away, she considered her best friend when she was a little girl, her grandpa. And I wrote a song called "Innocence Falls Away" about, you know, the fact that, you know, your smile will return, you know, and memories will suddenly be happy to remember and think about. And that's always how we deal with it.
That is really sweet. Oh, that is so sweet. Oh my goodness. Okay, I love that. I mean, because I will say, and
I
speaking to
love
the different
you.
parents, I love you so much more, Ira. I do. I really, especially after this. Like, I could not believe this is taking this long for us to have a freaking conversation,
I
and the
hope I'm
technology has
I
been
hope
here for
I'm
a
what
while.
you expected.
Yeah. Honestly, I really did. I did not have any expectations. You know, I knew your energy, at least what you were giving off on Facebook. Like, I knew your energy. And so I will say that your energy has not disappointed. How about that? Like, your
There we
energy
go.
is
I'll
really
take it.
strong. Like, it is really strong, and I love it. It's genuine, and I love that. But I will say, I've been speaking to a lot of different parents, and you know, everyone has been doing things differently, especially around death and the topic. Some are completely hiding it from their kids, and some are a little bit more open. Some are kind of dealing with it as time, you know, progresses and if events happen. And so it's been very interesting to see how everyone is dealing with this whole pandemic now. Like
Yeah.
it's really crazy. It is
Well,
really crazy.
I think people's, you know, your inner values are what kind of guide that stuff. I mean, people
Yeah,
who buy into various isms, you know,
yeah.
whatever your ism is, are going to use that ism. You know, whether it's, you know, Catholicism or Judaism or, you know, whatever ism you're finding. You know, I'm a believer in light. That is my thing. But it's you know, whatever gives someone solace. I just hope that when people are dealing with this, I hope people are preparing to deal honestly with their children, because I can't imagine that everyone won't know someone
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
affected
At
physically by this.
certainly at this point.
And so it's a time to discuss with your kids in ways that make sense through your isms and through your ways and through your values, what that means,
Yeah,
and what it means to for people that were home. You know, we're home from school. It's harder for people with younger kids or kids who have cognitive issues. To kind of explain what we're going through. You know, why are we home all the time? Well, it's a virus.
mhm.
Well, I've had a virus before. How come I can't go to school? Um, well, you know, because this is a virus that people get, you know, can is a little bit more dangerous, and people can get really, really sick. Oh, I was really sick. Remember, I was home for a week, mommy. You know, you get that, and trying to work through the concept without scaring your children, but
Mhm.
letting them know, listen, this is something that your kids are going to be a little frightened with, but you can do it in ways that make sense. It's no different to me than, you know, the concept of global warming or all the other things that are a little scary in the world. You know, I, for those who don't buy into global warming, that's just my my belief. So,
No. Are you
sorry that
saying
I
that
actually
because of my facial
say that in
expression?
America, but 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 it's the truth. But you know, it's explaining things to children that are not positive, because the world has a lot of scary stuff, and
Yeah.
there are scary things, and there are scary people. And you know, our friend Fred Rogers, you know, look for the helpers.
I love him.
You know,
I
that's
love him.
that's kind of what we do.
I will. Okay, so I know I do have one final question for you. All right, first off, I cannot believe you just brought up Mr. Rogers. You know I love him. I've been trying to be the 2020 version of him for a while, and so I'm still working on it.
Oh, I have a book of his sayings that someone gave me. I love it. I've had it for years, and then now Fred is in vogue suddenly again because of the movies. Um,
Oh yeah.
but
Did you
you
see
know,
it?
for me,
Did you
I've
see
been a
it?
fan forever, and you know, brilliant
Did
and
you see the
honest. That's
movie?
what I mean. Oh, I've seen both. I saw the
Oh,
documentary and the Tom Hanks one.
the
Both were
documentary had me a
fantastic.
little interested. Now that had me like I was just like, okay, like wow, I didn't know that about him. The movie brought me to tears, but mostly because it was nostalgia for me. And so I went with my husband and I. Mind you, it was so crazy. It was only four of us in the entire theater. My husband and I sat in the back, and of course we were in our 30s. And then there was another couple sitting in front of us, and I know they had to at least be 60 to 70. And so it was so interesting to see, again, these different generations here to see this movie. And all of us, it was just, I don't know, it did something to us. But it really had me to tears. And I was just like, he was so amazing. And I'm like, he just not, everyone doesn't or did not get a chance to see what I know I saw in him, you know? And it's just anyway, it's just amazing, freaking amazing. So, but I love the movie. I love it. That's my rant for this whole podcast. I do have one final question for you, Ira.
Sure.
So, back on parenting, what has been one of your proudest moments as a father that you would like to share that has just made you uncontrollably just in awe of you being able to be a father?
You know, when you think about the awe-inspiring moments from the time my children were born, you know, when you watch that birth, it's the most incredible thing in the world, because it's life, you know, it's the rejuvenation of life, and it's the spirit of life, and it's the moving ahead of yourself, your progeny, and you know, what's amazed me, I'm not going to give you one thing, because I'm going to tell you with both of my kids, the thing that amazes me are always those times where they show resilience, the resilience to get through things that are brutally hard, as we all do. And my kids have had to face some things, like many people have, that are really difficult and more difficult than the average Joe. But you know, there are people who have it even worse. But they've experienced some stuff, and watching them get through the things they've gotten through and move to the next thing, you know, face it and be there and be present with it and accept the fact that here's where I am, and you know, punch life right back when it has to break on through the wall to the next thing. And there's been so many of those. You know, I can't pick one, because there's so many that have just blown me away. But it's those moments where I see that I know they'll be okay. You know, and that's, what more can you give your children than a sense of, you know, what do you want with your kids? I want kids who are, this is the same thing I tell my students, you know, the happiest, most successful and independent people that they can be. Yeah. What more can you give them?
What more
and if they show the resilience and they show some joy, and they find out where they're going, you know, that's the stuff. That's the stuff. You know, that inner strength and the ability to smile through sometimes. That's the best I can tell you.
I like that.
That's my present.
I like that. That's a great place to end. I thank you so much for your wisdom and inspiring us on this, and just allowing me to be involved in your journey. And I really thank you. I really thank you for saying yes.
You are a brother from the heart, my friend. Thank you for having me on. Only good things. Please stay in touch. Oh. And peace to everybody out there.
At this point, you cannot get rid of me.
Good. Excellent. That worked out splendidly for both of us.
That it did. Thank you, Ira. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Yeehaw.
Bye.